Welcome to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number G to
5.
NC-17. This is Top 5.
G is not a number. Start over.
Based on the success of Deadpool and Logan, what comic series and character should be could be a successful R movie? Which I find interesting because there are some movies out there. I mean, the Kingsman is based on a comic book, and it is rated R.
Well, yeah, but Kingsman is based on a Mark Miller comic book, so
Kick-Ass.
Going in.
Isn't Kick-Ass rated R?
Also a Mark Miller comic book.
Yeah.
So you know that it's going to be F-bombs and boobies.
I know, but those are also, I think when people are like, oh my gosh, Deadpool did a rated R movie and Logan did a rated R movie, and therefore suddenly comic books should be rated R movies, and it's like, okay, well, we can talk about that. That's what we're going to do in this top 5. But we have to also realize that there have already been movies out that are comic book movies that have been successful R-rated movies.
What they mean are superheroes that we know from the big 2 publishers, which is totally not going to be on my list, by the way.
Well, my number 5 is Marvel's Blade. Now, I know Blade kicked off the Marvel Studios universe, the comic book universe, but if I remember correctly, that was like a PG movie. And Blade really deserves a lot more blood, guts, and foul language. And we haven't seen Blade in a while. And
I haven't seen Blade anywhere in a while.
Yeah, so I think it's about time that we
Blade
see another
rated
vampire
R,
movie.
I'm almost sure.
Was it? Double check that.
Blade, 1998 superhero film, but rated R.
Okay, well there you go. So that's one that one should be a successful R movie, and one could argue that it's already been a successful R-rated movie because it helped launch Marvel Studios. But I think it's time for another Blade Blade movie to appear. I know Wesley Snipes may not be able to be in it, but I want to see some more Blade. So that's my number 5.
You also have to take into account that Blade came out 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And Wesley is 55 years old.
Yep.
So you can't necessarily yourself to
an old daywalker with his walker slicing up vampires.
Come over here. You're too far away. My sword's not that long. My number 5 is actually never going to happen for 2 very important reasons.
Why is that?
Well, I think the first is that the creator has moved on to different things, and I think things that have enjoyed a bigger audience. And 2, the main characters are 10-year-old boys who curse up a storm.
Oh, so you and me when we were in middle school.
Right. I don't think you can get away with that. You can't have a 10-year-old throwing F-bombs and talking about his nads all the time the way you would have to do an R-rated movie adaptation of Judd Winnick's Barry Ween Boy Genius. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest comics of all time. And I say that as someone who has read a lot more comics than anyone sane would ever really want to, because when you get into a Barry Ween story, you are dealing with it. Honestly, it's an extension of that Batman prepared for anything mentality, only it's played tongue in cheek. It's really, really funny. And it does goofy things like at one point aliens are attacking and Barry busts out his lightsaber. And his friend's like, holy F-bomb, you made an effing lightsaber. And he's like, every schmuck in this quadrant has one since the prequels. And then he goes on and has a lightsaber battle. But
yeah,
they're really effective and they're really well done stories. Judd Winnick knows how to write a good story. So I would love to, and know that I will never see a film, because you can't have a 10-year-old say those words.
Well, we were talking about Kick-Ass. She was a pretty foul-mouthed.
Yeah, but I'm sure they had to deprogram her and take her to Orange Leaf. You had to spend a lot of time in therapy and just saying, listen, Helen, just say these words, don't hear them.
Okay. All right. My number 4, my initial number 4 is also one that I know cannot be made. It would be Bill Willingham's Ironwood. Problem with that is that would be just a straight up porno, right? So but it's a great fantasy setting with just a lot of sex and naked people running around. It's a really great series if you can track it down. But because that one's probably not going to be possible, I went with Southern Bastards.
Ooh.
There seems to be this growing trend. I don't know why. I can speculate there seems to be this growing trend of re-examining racism in a lot of different ways and in a lot of different places. And Southern Bastards is one that does tackle racism and mystery and all of this stuff in the South where, you know, those kinds of things happen. And you and I have reviewed a couple of issues of Southern Bastards on the Dueling Review podcast and on Majorspoilers.com. And I find that story just incredibly fascinating. You know, a little revenge, you know, the racist guy getting his comeuppance and all those kinds of things. So I think I would like to see Southern Bastards done, and I think it probably could be done. And my guess is if we go much longer in this political environment, then I would imagine that within the next 2 years, Southern Bastards will be a movie that's in theaters.
I like to think, and this I think is my positive side, saying that this is coming to the forefront because we're at the point that the last bastions, the last holdouts of those thought processes are finally being brought out into the light so that they can eventually be stomped. But I agree with you. I think that series would be not only incredibly timely, but I think it would be one where the right creator, the right director could make some serious, you know, Gene Roddenberry, Bella painted half black, half white kind of allegory for people looking around them in 2017, you know, Universal Studios Hollywood.
Yeah.
That sentence didn't end where it should have.
Well, that would be my number 4. Is I think Southern Bastards is one that could be a really successful R-rated movie.
Yeah, agreed. My number 4 would be less successful as a movie, but I think it would be a hell of a lot of fun to watch because it was a hell of a lot of fun to read in a very dark and cynical sort of point and laugh at your younger self kind of way. We talked about Warren Ellis. Sometimes, for tax purposes, Warren Ellis goes by another name, and that name is Garth Ennis. And you can tell me they're different guys, and one of them's Scottish and one of them's Irish, and I won't believe you because it's clearly not true. Also, I think Warren Ellis is from the north of England. However, Britain, forgive me. Garth Ennis did write an amazing series that I think would make a better TV show, but would make an amazing R-rated movie, and that is The Boys.
Yeah, that's my number 1.
Is it?
Yeah, and for the exact reasons that you're about to describe, just the fact that it is an unflinching look at superhero powers mixed in with the most bloody violence and sex you will ever see.
It is the basest notions of humanity. Every terrible urge you've ever imagined anyone ever having is part of this. And, you know, it ties into the real world in metatextual ways. The big annual summer crossover that we see every year in comics is explained away as all the superheroes taking the summer off, going to an island in the Pacific, drinking and drugging and banging each other senseless, and then coming back and saying they saved the world from Galactus.
And just to kind of give listeners an idea of how violent this movie is, imagine Wee Huey, played by what's his name?
Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg.
Scotty from Star Trek.
Walking hand in hand with his girlfriend. It's a wonderful day in the park. It's all beautiful. You got your, let me tell you a story about my best friend.
You know what it's probably going to be? It's going to be Dreamweaver.
Probably. And they get to the middle of the park and they're surrounded by all these people having a great day, and they're holding their hands and they're looking deep into each other's eyes, and we cut to Simon Pegg, Wee Huey, and we start to push in on him, and then we see the dream and the love in his eyes, and then we cut right back to his girlfriend doing the same thing as we start to push in, and then suddenly, kablam! Her whole body explodes as she is being
fine red mist
as she's being hit by a villain being thrown by one of the good guys, and Wee Huey is holding her 2 hands. All that's left of her body.
And bloody severed arms.
And then suddenly smash cut to opening credits, The Boys. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum.
The Boys is a wonderful series just for the main characters, because the main character, Wee Huey, gets drawn into a world where he thinks he's going to help save the world from crazy evil supers. And he finds out that not only are the people he's working for crazier and possibly as evil, I don't want to spoiler anything. There's some stuff going on with
it's pretty deep, man.
American company.
Yeah, I would like to see it as
the greatest character in comic book history in The Frenchman.
Which is the one that does the hamster thing? Is that the Frenchman?
No, that's one of the evil villains, and Huey saves the hamster.
Okay.
No, the Frenchman is one of the boys, and he is basically a human battering ram. And team leader of the boys, Billy Butcher, refers to him as a mad C word, which I don't say, but the British do. And he's like, sometimes in any fight, what you want on your side is a mad C word.
Yeah.
And at one point, the Frenchman tells him his origin, and it's basically a combination of the Chuck Berry song where he's singing about Black Pierre and My Marie, and a weird episode of Love American Style. It makes no sense at all, but it has just a brutal ending, and it has not only commentary on comics but political satire, some hard-edged humor and sex, and I don't know why I love it. It has the most withering, just horrible, lacerating a mockery of the Legion of Superheroes ever done in history. And this is in an industry where one of the characters floating around is named Arm Fall Off Boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is really good. And the comic book series, I think, went on a little bit longer than it should, maybe about 2 or 3 years longer than it should. But it is a story that has a beginning, middle, and end. And I agree with you that it would be a much better TV series. And I know they've talked about trying to do TV series of this before, but it would be a very brutal, hard R NC-17 movie if they did it.
Yeah, and Simon Pegg is getting too old to play Huey. And who's that English guy with the head from
Zaphod Beeblebrox?
No, that's the English guy with 2 heads and 3 arms.
Okay.
Not Daniel Craig, but the other one who looks like Daniel Craig. Not Russell Crowe. Not Russell Brand. Not Neville Brand.
I'm at a total loss. I'm already bad at names, so you're just like throwing things out to me.
You're bad at, hey, it's that guy. At this point, I'm just trying to riff and make the episode just a little bit longer so we can hit that 30-minute sweet spot.
So you hit your number 4. It's on to my number 3.
Your number 3.
My number 3 is one that's been out, I want to say probably in the last 2 years. The idea behind this is that this guy and this girl discover that they can make time stop. And when they can make time stop, they can go do all sorts of crazy things, including commit crimes. Now,
they can also do each other.
How do they make time stop? They have to have an orgasm.
Right.
It's called Sex Criminals from Image Comics. And it is, as you know, it's got a lot of sex in it. And that is the point of the story. But it's still a fascinating story. And Matthew, I know you love this series. And it would make a great R-rated movie only because you would have, boobs and wieners flopping around all the time.
But it's also, it's a story that, and we talked about this, I think, in this week's MSP, the Major Spoilers podcast. Check it out at majorspoilers.com on our podcast posting page. I like it when sexuality is part and parcel of someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
John and Susie, the protagonists of this, are just a couple of normal schmoes. She's a librarian. He's an ineffectual middle management suck-up. And they have a sex life. And it leads to the weird stuff, and the sex is intrinsically part of this story. But it's not a story where the sex is showing the sex is the point. The sex is actually important to it. So it's not like, say a Skinamax After Dark.
Yeah, this is not going to be a 50 Shades of Grey kind of movie.
No, where you pause and here's a sex scene and then you go.
Right.
This is a movie where the sex is tied into it, and the way that they deal with each other and the way they approach their sex lives and the way that they approach their world is all tied up. And they have adult perspectives, and that adult perspective includes the fact that, they go home and they totally get naked and, do the horizontal
and stop
mambo.
Time.
And time stops, and then it gets weird.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
I definitely think that would be a great.
I thought it was going to be on your list.
Sarah already tonight reminded me of 4 things that I forgot of and completely scalamandered my list. And now you brought up this, and I'm literally to the point where I cannot believe that my list is as fractured as it is, because that should have been on there.
Yeah, well, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a little bit older, because I don't know if you guys know this, but I grew up in the 70s. That's completely apropos of nothing, because the comic I'm talking about came out of the 80s, specifically the 80s black and white comics boom. And it was the first book to deal with superheroes and adult themes in a way that I felt was actually adult and not just a Marvel comic with butts.
Mm-hmm.
It's 4 characters who die, come back from the dead, and because they're dead, they're creepy, 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 but they're still people who want to eat. They're still people who want to date and have sex and run around and watch TV, but they're also the superhero team called the Elementals.
Mm-hmm.
Done by Bill Willingham.
Yeah, that's the second time he's shown up on this list. Boy, early Bill. I know a lot of people know Bill Willingham from Fables, and people really enjoy his stuff there. But the things that he was doing with Elementals and Ironwood and that little devil guy. And
Ironwood goes back to like the late 70s, early 80s at DC, of all places.
It's like well, I mean, it's not Eclipse, but it's one of the adult comic, has got all the republishing things in it. But Ironwood is really good. And if you ever attend a comic book convention and you pull that out for Bill Willingham to sign, he will go, "Oh my goodness, I haven't seen this in forever." And it's good. But yeah, Elementals is another one that is right up there. And if I'm not mistaken, Matthew, I'm pretty sure that someone has acquired the complete rights to the Elementals from Willingham, and that they are working on.
In the 90s.
No. This is just like recently, because he had a picture of.
Have the rights. He sold the rights in the 90s. Somebody else had them.
Well, then he must be working. He must be working with them, because he's got the Bible to the Elementals that he took a picture of on his Instagram and said, "Hey, I can't wait to see this move forward." So I don't know if that's movie, cool. TV, something, but definitely it's adult.
Yeah, because they sold it to a man named Andrew Rev, and Rev is, in business parlance, he may not entirely have been above board, is what the story was. But the thing about the Elementals, and this was how Sarah sold it to me. She's like, "Hey, remember that one book where that girl slept with the were-dolphin?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do remember that book, and that is important." And I think it's another example of the violence in Elementals feels very modern, because at one point they're fighting a villain. They're like, "How are we going to take him down?" And Fathom, the water elemental, gets involved and accidentally just myrtleizes this guy, leaves him a steaming pile of bloody slorg on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to deal with the realization that she just murdered this guy.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, one of the villains, the terrible evil villain called Shapeshifter, disappears. And several issues down the line, one of the Elementals meets this cool new wonderful boyfriend, and they date for 1.5 years without her thinking anything weird about it. And after 1.5 years, he takes her out to a hilltop, hands her a gun, says, "I'm really Shapeshifter. You've been sleeping with me for 1 year. I'm sure you want to kill yourself now." And it's an amazingly well done story, a lot better than that particular short version would have anyone think. But it's very adult in all the right ways.
Mm-hmm. So we are recording this episode in June. There may be news of the Elementals come the end of July, or maybe it's already been out. But Michael Lovitz, who specializes in comic books and entertainment industries, has recently registered a trademark for the Elementals on behalf of Dynamite Comics.
Dynamite?
Yep.
They're good. I like them.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of good stuff. So I think that's what I had seen.
They bought the rights to my daughter last week.
Yeah, that's who I think I had seen Willingham post about. So I would imagine that maybe around San Diego Comic-Con time, if it hasn't been announced, I'm going to imagine more Elementals comics popping up, and then that might, Matthew, spur that discussion for some movies.
That's another one I'd want to see on TV, but it'd be a great movie.
Mm-hmm. We are up to number 2, and my number 2 is a book that started out as a parody or a spoof, not really a total spoof, of the comic book hero genre, but quickly developed into a story all its own. This is written by Kirkman, with art by Otley, and who's the other one that does the art on that?
Corey Walker.
Yeah, Walker and Otley do the art. Have switched back and forth on the art for years. But Robert Kirkman's Invincible tells the story of a young Mark Grayson who discovers that he has superpowers. He's finally inherited superpowers from his dad, Mr. Invincible, and Omni-Man. Sorry, and then all heck breaks loose in his life. And people get, and this is Otley more so, I think, than Walker, but under Otley's pen, people get beat to a bloody pulp. And this would be a movie to see in 3D because eyeballs would be flying at you out of the screen.
I don't want that.
People's brain matters and bodily guts and fluids would be all over the place. Invincible is an incredible comic that is just coming to an end in the next couple of months. It's an incredible ride, an incredible story. I love how it's evolved over the years, and I think it would make an incredible movie. It would certainly have to be R-rated because of all of the violence and some of the sex stuff too, but mostly because of the violence. But Invincible would be a perfect rated R movie property.
I agree. And there are points in Invincible where I was like, oh, too far.
Yeah.
Nope, they've gone too far. I can't believe that they just ripped the leg off a pregnant woman.
Yep.
But again, it works better in context.
Yes. Yeah, definitely go check out the context.
My number 2 actually has a little bit in common with Invincible in that a lot of times the characters you see are archetypically similar or based on high-profile superhero characters. But it takes place on the mean streets of Neapolis, a city filled with superhumans, to the point where literally everyone is a superhuman. That's not a modification. Everyone has superpowers, including the cops of Top 10. Top 10 from America's Best Comics from 1999 or so.
Yeah.
The same universe as Promethea and Tom Strong, the stuff that Alan Moore did after Watchmen and after, V for Vendetta and the things that kind of deconstructed the whole superhero genre. Top 10 is a universe where literally anyone can have superpowers, and magic exists side by side with ancient gods, exists side by side with cyborgs and robots, and they're all in Neapolis, this big New York-style metropolis, and the cops of Top 10 have to take care of them. They have to take care of the city. At one point, a character who's totally not the Martian Manhunter, you guys, gets arrested and is put in jail. But because she's telepathic and a shapeshifter, they have to lock her up, and she's still using her telepathic powers to mess with people's heads. But of course, her lawyers are very angry that she's in this terrible, inhumane cell, and it has really well done procedural cop kind of NYPD Blue moments side by side with superhero wackiness. And there are points in it where every character will surprise you. Every one of the main characters has a moment where you're just like, oh my God, I never saw that. I never saw that coming. But it makes perfect sense.
Oh, yeah. If this were a TV series and you went into the, the bar episode, the bar issue, that would be really interesting to see as well. We reviewed this also on the Major Spoilers podcast a long time ago. You'll have to go into the archives. Yeah, you'll have to go into the archives for that. But definitely, Top 10 is a movie worth putting on our top 5 list.
Has one of the greatest characters of all time, and I say that a lot, and I don't say it lightly. Joe Pye, a robot cop from District 11, who is so incredibly smart that at one point you don't realize what he's doing until he's done doing it, and everybody goes, did he just do that? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I have accidentally disabled my onboard recording systems. It is a shame that happened. It would be too bad if someone said something illegal while I was unable to record it.
Yeah.
It's a well-done series. I recommend it.
Yep. My number 1 was The Boys, of course. You can go find that. I know Dynamite had it. DC originally had it, and then it got a little bit too much for them to handle. And then Dynamite...
It started as a pitch for an arc of Justice League.
Oh, I could see that.
I cannot.
Especially with because Garth Ennis did that other that harder Superman story with what was the British guy? He was a bad guy trying to make Superman see what would happen if he had his greatest things. What was it? Union Jack? Was that the guy's name? Do you know which one I'm talking about? They did an animated movie based on it not too long ago as well.
What happened in the story?
Well, he is, so it's basically, I think it's an all British team. They come and he just totally starts screwing around with Superman's life. And if I remember correctly, he actually killed Lois Lane at one point, or showed Superman what would happen if he killed Lois Lane. And that's supposed to drive Superman over the edge. Now, he is coming back in DC Comics, and he's going to be threatening Superman's son in the comics instead of Lois Lane.
Manchester Black.
Manchester Black, that's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, the head of the Elite. He sucked.
Yeah, the Elite. That was the series. That would be something interesting if DC wanted to go that way. I mean, they've kind of already done it with Suicide Squad, but the Elite would be a dark series. But like I said, you can go check the movie out. I'm gonna have to look. That Justice League the Elite may have been an animated movie that is already rated R. I know that.
Possible.
Well, I know that Dark Knight Returns and The Killing Joke have both got R ratings.
Yeah,
this one,
they're both awful too.
It's not popping up here, but it's go look up The Elite. Superman versus the Elite. That's what it is. Yeah. So I'll throw that in as a number one if they wanted to go that way. But
there you go, a bonus
discussion there. All right, Matthew, what do you have for your number one?
My number one is the comic that launched 1,000 ships. Indeed, the comic that launched many things that people love in comics, I think. Without this comic, there would be no The Sandman. There would be no The Fables. There would be no The Transmetropolitan. Without this comic, I think there would be maybe not no, but less of the modern take at DC, for good or for ill. I think that the DC Extended Universe movies would not exist in their current form without this book. This is a book that was transformative because it showed DC that they could play within the boundaries of their established continuity, but also do stuff that was new and weird and adult. And it led to Vertigo. It actually became one of the core Vertigo titles and was until 2011. So for 30 years almost was one of Vertigo's, big cornerstone books. And I'm, of course, talking about John Constantine, Hellblazer.
Oh, but they've already had that movie, Matthew.
No, they haven't. No, they haven't. And
it had the big gun with the cross on the end of it.
Nope, that was not a Hellblazer movie.
It's got Tilda Swinton in it or whatever.
I will end you. No, I'm talking about an actual Hellblazer movie. I'm not talking about The Matrix with a little bit of magic stuck in. I am talking about John Constantine, who is this weird, creepy, mid-30s English guy who will probably steal your wallet, make out with your wife, and accidentally turn, your cat into a demon. It's a book that it spun out of Swamp Thing, which was another possibility. But
I thought about Swamp Thing too. And to be honest, I was going to put Hellblazer on the list too, but I was like, that's already been done. I've already got another movie that's already been done, and it's kind of ironic that my list started with an R-rated movie with Blade, and yours ends with an R-rated movie that's already been made with Constantine.
No, Hellblazer is a good movie. That Constantine movie, I don't know what that was. It certainly wasn't Hellblazer. And
well, then I would definitely agree with you. I would like to see that redone, and I think there's probably enough interest from it because of the NBC TV show that ran for a season and a half or whatever it was,
like 14 episodes.
And then they've put him on the Arrow TV show, and he's also appeared in the animated series a couple of times. So. In the animated series, I mean the animated movie series that they have.
Yeah.
So
I believe he's
probably
part of the
right
Justice
for doing
League
that.
Dark team.
Yes, he is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that is your number one. Anything else you want to add about that?
That is my number one.
All right.
Go read all the Hellblazer you can find. Read the good Hellblazer. I actually will tell you, people will say don't read Hellblazer before Garth Ennis takes over in the 40s. They are wrong. They are wrong, they are bad, and they are dumb, because the launch of Hellblazer under Jamie Delano and Richard Piers Rayner is really, really good. The first 15 or 20 issues of Hellblazer are so weird and so out there and so alienating and freaky that literally Vertigo Comics spun out of it and started doing that with everything.
Yeah,
and
Swamp Thing went over there. Books of Magic went over there.
Animal Man and Books of Magic came after. Hellblazer comes from 1988.
Yeah.
So, you look at that, that's before Sandman, that's before Fables.
No, but I'm saying that because of Vertigo, all these other things became of it because they could do that hard-edged, adultish type stuff.
There was not only an audience for it, there was an audience who wanted more and more and more. And that's why we have the Academy Award-winning Suicide Squad.
So this does bring up a good question. We'll have a little bit of a bonus discussion for everybody here. We've kind of talked about this before, but I'm pretty sure that you have this argument that superhero movies don't have to be R-rated.
Correct.
Or that there's no need to have an R-rated superhero movie.
And I also believe that superhero movies don't all need to be PG, kid-friendly things.
Right,
I think that the biggest problem that we have with this is, I think that what we're going to see coming out of, was Suicide Squad a PG-13 or an R?
Oh, I'd have to double check really quick, but I'm pretty sure it was up there pushing the boundaries, and I want to say it's PG-13.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I don't remember any F-bombs in it, but that
yeah, PG-13, and the main thing was because even though they killed a lot of things, they were all not real things, so you can get rid of that.
They were alien coffee ground creatures.
Yeah, so all the blood is not real blood, so you can drop down a rating for that.
The lessons that Hollywood is going to take away from Deadpool and Logan are all the wrong lessons, in that Deadpool and Logan both told stories that were R-rated for a reason. They were R-rated with a purpose, with motivation, and they, I think, needed to be R-rated to tell the story they wanted to tell. So when we have that moment where Deadpool throws an F-bomb and makes a joke about, how his tiny little hand is going to feel funny touching himself, and has the sex scenes that, again, motivated sex scenes that make sense for the character. All of that makes sense. I haven't seen Logan, but I understand that Logan is rated R for the volume and the thingy and the blood and the violence. And
there's violence. There's a lot of violence in there, but it's I think mostly because of the F-bombs that get dropped.
Right. Sometimes the language, the violence, the tone of the story makes perfect sense. And sometimes it doesn't. And I'm afraid what we're going to get out of the success of these R-rated films for superheroes is, basically Iron Man 2, only he says F.
Yeah. So my counter argument to that is you've kind of already, before we got into this discussion, you've kind of already justified a reason why it's okay to have the R-rated superhero movies, is because there is an audience for that. Now, granted, we had mentioned some R-rated movies that have come out, The Kingsman and Kick-Ass and some of those others.
Which are fun but dumb.
Right. And the thing with those is that they do have an audience. Now, Kingsman actually had a much larger audience than I think they anticipated. But something like Kick-Ass did not have as large an audience as I think that they would hope when you compare it to some of the current superhero fare. So I think if the studios are going to go with R-rated, and I don't really think Batman needs to be R-rated. I don't think Superman needs to be R-rated. I think that something like Suicide Squad definitely can be R-rated, and Constantine can be R-rated. I think Swamp Thing can be R-rated. I think that you can have an X-Men movie that is R-rated and it will work. I think you have to be real careful with that, and it has to be a very specific story that you want to tell. But I think you can have an R-rated X-Men movie.
But the problem is the X-Men movie people have proven themselves to be so trustworthy in carefully picking their stories and battles.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So I think that there is a marketplace for R-rated movies, and we've named some of them here. But I guarantee you, if they made a Boys movie or they made an Invincibles movie, it won't do as well as the stuff from the bigger studios. I think Blade would do really, really incredible if they brought it out right now as an R-rated movie, remade it, brought the character back. I think that audiences would just flip their S for that stuff. Yeah. And I think that would work. But I don't think that The Runaways, for example, should be an R-rated movie. No need for that.
Unless you wanted to do Runaways in the style of like a Kevin Smith teens movie, or like Kids with Rosario Dawson, where it's like kids doing weird and shocking and terrible things. But again, that's not the tone of your source material.
Right. And so the film that I think people should really watch is a documentary called Not Yet Rated. This film is not yet rated, where it's all about the ratings industry and how movies get rated. Because a lot of times, the minute that you say R-rated, and especially from our lists, it's got excessive sex or violence in it. But, dropping the F-bomb like 3 times in a movie can get you an R rating. Just that alone, right?
People are dumb.
Right. So it is kind of subjective once it goes into the rating stage. But, if what is it? X-Force?
Right.
X-Force, I could see getting an R rating and, crank up the language and crank up the violence just a little bit. Now, I'm not saying like people have to be beheaded every 5 seconds, but just the language alone could get it an R rating.
I agree. And I think that if it's a story that justifies it, if it's a property that justifies it, but I don't think that we need an R-rated
rating for
America or an R-rated Superman or
R rating for R rating's sake, just because you think it's going to draw the audience in, I don't think is appropriate. Because you have to remember, at least the studios, I hope, are thinking about this, is that there weren't any Logan toys, there weren't any Deadpool toys that came out of those 2 movies. They got their money from the box office, and that was about it. If you're going to make a lot of money, yes, you can make it in the box office, but man, the toy aisles are pretty bare. Well, the toy aisle is pretty bare right now of Wonder Woman merchandise because so many people are buying the Wonder Woman merchandise.
Yep.
And that's not an R-rated movie.
I'm concerned that we are going to see people who say, you know what we should do? We're going to tell this story. We're going to do a Wonder Woman movie, but we're going to do it in the style of Deadpool, and we're going to have it be all weird and dark and edgy and cursy and sexy. And that's not necessarily appropriate for Wonder Woman as a character, I feel.
Here are a couple of other movies that I think could be R-rated worthy. The Skrull Kill Crew.
That would be good.
Yeah. I would see that as an R-rated movie. And then what's Damage Control could also be an R-rated movie.
Oh my God, with the Damage Control.
Well, hey, so again, by the time people hear this, the movie may already be out. But my understanding is, this is just me prior to the movie, my understanding is the Vulture, the Michael Keaton character, is a hired contractor going around and cleaning up all of the damage after the incident from the Avengers movie. And that's how they get a hold of all their weapons to do their thing.
Damage
control.
Shouldn't.
Do you have a couple of others that you think would be like almost obscure? That would be obscure, maybe comics or properties. Skrull Kill Crew would be pretty cool. I think as an R-rated.
I like to see an R-rated.
Oh, and you know why Skrull Kill Kill would be great as an R-rated? Because it can start out as a comedy, busting in and killing some cows, and then it turns into an aliens, like horror movie.
Yeah, you could pull it off like The Thing.
Yeah.
I would really love to see Rom Space Knight done as an R-rated movie with realistic, war sequences and realistically looking at what it means to give up your body and basically be mutilated to become a cyborg Space Knight. You could deal with all of the weird kind of RoboCop body horror stuff, and you could deal with realistic aspects of a cosmic explosion lifestyle and an endless war against magic shapeshifters from beyond space. That'd be cool. As much as I hate to say it, I think that the world really deserves a decent Omaha the Cat Dancer movie.
I thought about that too, but it's like, I don't know Fritz the Cat was really popular, right?
Probably be better unrated
or animated. Yeah, it could work that way.
I think you could get away with doing Omaha live action, especially, if we look at the prosthetics that they've done, because the characters of Omaha were human for all intents and purposes, or as human as, Helena Bonham Carter in that terrible Marky Mark version of Planet of the Apes. And people still were like, I totally want to sleep with her. And I'm like, dude. And then, of course, a girl was like, I want to sleep with her too. And I'm like, dude, girl, what are you?
I'm trying to think. There were a couple of other movies or a couple of other properties that popped in. Oh, I know. Seriously, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yes.
And Afterlife with Archie.
Would
also be super excellent R-rated movies. And with the success of Riverdale, they could totally do Afterlife with Archie.
I would love to see Chilling Adventures done as a retro early 60s piece where you're dealing with the
Dark
bizarre
Shadows.
haunting of Hill House kind of. Yeah. You have that thing where it's a combination of like, I don't know, Dobie Gillis and Shirley Jackson, and really play up the gothic horror and the weird manipulative aspects of the whole thing and the bizarre incestual undertones and everything. Just go nuts. That would be great.
Yeah. All right, listeners, there you go. A bunch of movies and a good discussion, I think, about R-rated comic book properties. We want to know what you think. Head over to Majorspoilers.com and the podcast posting page for this episode.
Podcast posting page.
We want you to share your top 5 comic book series or characters that could be successful R-rated movies. Tell us why you think they would be good, and we're going to read them, and we're going to enjoy reading them, and everyone else is going to enjoy reading them because everyone enjoys a list. Take care, everyone. We'll talk with you soon.
This podcast is copyright 2017 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.